the boy who looked up. Nobody remembered when Eli stopped trying. There had been a time when he had stood at the edge of the other children's games with that particular stillness of a child who wants to be invited and is calculating the odds. When he had followed the older boys down to the river, 3 steps behind, hoping proximity would eventually become inclusion. That was before they started calling him what they called him. The orphan. Not as description, as designation. The word that explained, to anyone who needed explaining, why the normal rules of fellowship did not apply to him. His parents had died in the same fever, 4 months apart, when Eli was 5 years old. He was 7 now. He lived with his uncle Tobias, who was not cruel. This was important. Tobias was not cruel, but who had 4 children of his own and a farm that demanded everything. Eli was fed. Eli had a mat to sleep on. Eli was not beaten. But there is a large territory between not beaten and loved, and Eli lived somewhere in the middle of it, navigating every day with the careful attention of someone who has learned not to ask for more than is offered. He had stopped asking. The other children had their reasons, or thought they did. Death, to children, is not primarily a tragedy. It is primarily a contamination. It happens to families and then it marks them, and marked things are best avoided. The other children were not monsters. They were 7 years old and they were afraid, and frightened things push the source of their fear as far away as possible. Eli was very far away. He had understood this at 5, without having words for it. At 6 he had developed words for it, but they did not help. At 7 he had arrived at something worse than understanding acceptance. The flat, gray, exhausted acceptance of a child who has stopped expecting the world to be different than it is. He had a place of flat rock on the eastern edge of the village, overlooking the valley, where he went in the late afternoons when the other children were playing and he was not. He would sit for hours, his knees drawn up to his chest, watching the light change. It was not happiness, but it was his. He was sitting there the afternoon Jesus came to the village. He heard the crowd before he saw it. A group moving through the main road below. A man at the center, people pressing toward him. Eli watched from his rock as the children from the village ran toward the crowd. Micah and Joanna and the 3 boys from the lower farm, all of them pressing forward with the easy confidence of children who have never had reason to doubt their welcome. He stayed on his rock. He did not know how long he sat there before he realized the man was looking at him. The crowd had settled near the well. People sitting, some standing, the teacher speaking. The children had found places, wedging themselves between adults, and then the man turned his head not toward the crowd, not toward anyone speaking to him, directly toward a flat rock on the eastern edge of the village. Directly toward Eli. He said something to the person beside him. Then he stood and walked away from the well, toward the rock. Eli looked behind him, instinctively, to see who else was there. There was no one else. He should have run. The careful, watchful version of himself said so, the version that had learned not to expect things. He is not coming for you. Move before you get it wrong again, before you expect something and it doesn't come. He stayed on the rock. The man climbed the small slope and stopped a few feet away and looked at him. Not with pity. Eli knew pity, had catalogued its varieties. This was not that. This was the look Eli had no category for. The look that found him specifically. Not the orphan. Not the situation. Just him. May I sit? The man said. Children are not asked this. Eli stared. Yes, he said. It was his rock and he had been asked and he did not know what else to say. The man sat beside him. The right distance, close enough to speak, far enough to not overwhelm. He looked out at the valley the way Eli looked at it, with the easy attention of someone who finds the view worth finding. Neither of them spoke. You didn't come down, Jesus said. No. What? The honest answer was there, the whole architecture of it, the rock and the distance and the gray country and 2 years of careful retreat. He could feel all the reasons not to say it. He said it anyway. They don't want me there. No elaboration. No performance of the hurt. Just the fact, stated plainly. Jesus received it the same way. Without rushing to contradict it. Without the reflexive of course they do that adults usually produced, which always felt worse than silence. I know, Jesus said. 2 words. And something in them, the simplicity, the absence of the usual adult discomfort with a child's pain, unlocked something in Eli's chest that he had not known was locked. His eyes went hot. He did not cry. He was 7 years old and he had learned not to cry where anyone could see. He blinked and breathed and held it. They're afraid, Jesus said. Not excusing. Explaining. The difference mattered. When people are afraid they move away from the thing that frightens them. It isn't right. But it is what frightened people do. What are they afraid of? Of what happened to you. They don't understand that being near you won't make it happen to them. They're too young to understand that yet. Eli considered this. It was the most honest thing an adult had said to him in 2 years. Will they always be afraid? No. Fear like that gets smaller as people get older. Most of them will be ashamed of it, later. A small pause. Some of them will try to tell you they were never like that. Let them believe you believe them. It's easier. Eli almost smiled. They sat in silence for a while. The valley was going golden, the particular gold of late afternoon, the light thickening, the shadows stretching long. The hour Eli liked best. The hour when the world looked like it was made of something more than it usually looked like it was made of. Do you know where they are? He said. He had not planned to ask it. It arrived in his mouth, fully formed the question he had carried for 2 years, the one he never asked because there was no one to ask who would give him a real answer. He did not say who they were. He did not need to. Jesus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Look up." Eli looked up. The sky above the valley was enormous, the blue deepening toward the east, the west still lit, the first stars arriving at the edges of the dark. He had looked at the sky 100 times from this rock. He looked at it now. And something happened that he would never find adequate words for. The stars that had just appeared faint, early, barely there, seemed suddenly close. Not distant fire. Not cold light. Something warm. Something that had been waiting for him to look. The silence of the sky was not empty silence. It was the silence of a room where someone has just stopped speaking, where the words are still present in the air, still warm, still arriving. He looked for a long time. When he looked back down, his face was wet. But he was smiling, not the careful, almost smile from before, but something unguarded, something that had come up from somewhere deep and arrived on his face without asking permission. Jesus stood when the light began to go. "Will you come down now?" Eli looked at the village below. The same children. The same distance. "They still won't want me there," he said. "Probably not today," Jesus said. "But you'll know something they don't know. That changes things, even when it doesn't look like it changes things." He held out his hand. Eli looked at it for a moment. Then he took it, and they went down from the rock together, toward the village, toward the well, toward the crowd that parted as they approached. Eli moved through the space they made, still holding the hand, carrying what the sky had given him. The crowd closed behind them. Up on the flat rock, the valley continued its evening, the last light leaving, the stars arriving one by one, the sky doing what it always did, whether anyone was watching or not. Below, a boy stood at the edge of a crowd. His face was different. The children nearby noticed it without knowing what they were noticing, something in his posture, something in his eyes. Micah looked at him, then looked away, then looked back. Eli was looking at the sky. In the weeks that followed, people noticed small things. He laughed more. Not loudly. A quiet laugh, arriving unexpectedly, as if something inside him occasionally remembered something and could not help itself. He still went to the rock in the evenings. Still watched the valley go golden, but he always stayed until the stars came out. And he always looked at them the same way, not searching, not asking, not the watchful waiting of a child who has learned to expect nothing. Just looking. The way you look at someone who already knows you're there.